Hello and welcome to the Eye on the U podcast, the Miami Herald's Miami Hurricanes podcast. I'm David Wilson and I'm joined, as always, on the other line from Cam Ward country. It's Susan Miller-Degnan. Susan, what's going on?
Hey, I was snowbound. This happened icebound in places. So I had to wait 2 days and I'm still here back to South Florida.
Yes, Susan's still stuck up in the Pacific Northwest. A lot of Canes Pacific Northwest connections over the couple of years. Obviously, you spent a lot of time up there. Mario Cristobal, now Cam Ward coming. We're going to talk about two Cams on this episode today. One will be a quick one. Cam McCormick getting a ninth year of eligibility. Just
Right.
a fun story, I guess, depending on your perspective. But the big news, obviously, for the week for the Canes is Cam Ward pulling out of the NFL draft, deciding to come to Miami. A major twist in, we talked last week about Reese Poffenbarger and the precarious situation the Hurricanes were in with regards to finding a quarterback for the 2024 season. Well, they found they got the big pull. That was the number one guy they had on their list. A couple of weeks back, Cam Ward decided he was going to enter the draft, and Miami's able to lure him back back into the portal, I guess, and to Miami. Huge coup for them, especially because a couple days later, Talia Tagovailoa, who seemed like the other target there, had his waiver denied. But obviously seems like they're correlated to some degree. Miami, a degree of desperation, and they're able to land Cam Ward. Just a huge addition for the Hurricanes.
So yes, that was really, really kind of surprising news. Right before, what was it, 30 minutes before the Dolphins playoff
Yeah.
game, something like that. Right?
It
I'm
saved
sitting here and
a lot of Miami fans' nights, I think.
that's true. I'm sitting there. I was sitting there. I happened to be looking at the phone. We've been having some major snowstorms and ice storms, like I said, and everything else.
Mhm.
And 12 degrees, and I mean, felt like zero, kind of like the
The
Dolphins. And
Dolphins, yep.
yeah, and I was just happened to be looking at my phone before the playoff game, even though we haven't had internet in like a week, and I see the committed to the 305 or whatever it was. I'm like, what? I kind of looked
You still
like
had those
everybody
alerts
else.
on for Cam Ward?
But what I did, yeah, well, of course. But
Yeah.
what happened was I saw that and I thought, I'm sure like everybody else, like, is that
Is it
real?
real? Yeah.
Or yeah, is it a phony tweet or you know, somebody doing something pretty original or whatever?
Yeah.
And no, it was real, and very good news. Um, because we talked about a Poffenbarger, and we were I mean, at least they got somebody, right? And I thought that was good news to get somebody, even though people were saying, BS. It wasn't good news
Mhm.
that they struck out, and it turns out in the end now, they went from almost nobody, and
Yeah.
possibly if Corey Brown had transferred like zero,
Yeah.
other than a high school kid coming in and someone who's still rehabbing, and Emory Williams, and now they have like several quarterbacks all of a
Yeah.
sudden. And so the Talia thing, Tagovailoa, his waiver requests getting denied. It's just everything went right for Miami. It turned out, I mean, the Cam Ward is, the more I'm reading about him, the more I'm getting, more impressed and excited
Yeah.
that
I mean,
this
he's
could really.
awesome. He is I watched them. They were good this year. They were ranked for a lot of the season. Obviously West
Mhm.
Coast, so we don't get to watch them as much. But honestly, when you're covering college football, sometimes I get to watch, we get to watch those late night West Coast games more because
The late
we're getting
night.
home. Yeah,
Yep,
like
we
it's
do.
what's on when you walk in the door. I mean, he's
That's
awesome.
exactly why we can't sleep. We can't sleep. So
Yeah,
that's it.
he's awesome. I mean, he's like, I don't
Yeah.
want to compare him to Cam Newton because Cam Newton's like the best college player I think I've ever seen. But he's like Cam Newton light, sort of, Terrell Pryor, I mean, Jakari Brown, right? Big, physical. Um, but
Mhm.
the team was good, and it's Washington State, and they had a really good coach, obviously. But Washington State is not a powerhouse program by any stretch, right? And he made that team really competitive. They went toe to toe with Washington in the Apple Cup. Um, he's worst case he's gonna be really fun to watch. Best case uh, it's too early to say, but he's a guy who is probably gonna have like legit Heisman odds, right? Because he's that type of
Yes.
two-way threat who's going to put up huge numbers. And, it saves Miami because if they don't get him or Talia, if they get Talia, they one of probably the, he Talia would have probably been one of the better quarterbacks in the ACC. I don't know if he's top
Mhm.
2 or 3 or whatever, but he'd be way up there. Um, if they didn't get him, they had like legitimately maybe the worst quarterback situation in the conference. When you look at just the uncertainty there. Um, Now they suddenly have one of the best quarterback situations in the conference. Still maybe not as deep with high end talent as you would like, but Ward is very possibly the best quarterback in the conference. Poppenbarger, we said last week, I love the idea of him being a developmental guy who could sit this year and potentially start next year because he's young. Only be a junior this year. Um, and then obviously a couple developmental guys behind them. So yeah, I mean, it looked really
Yeah, I
dire
think
for
they're in good
Miami, and
shape.
now they're in great shape.
Yeah, I think they're in great shape. I now it's intriguing to me again to see what Jakari Brown does
Yeah.
after spring. Uh, um, because Cam Ward only has one season left,
Yes.
so he's played 4 years. He has one season left, and uh, for Jakari, Jakari could, depending how he does, come in next year. But then there's Emery, right? And then there's the new kid, Judd Anderson. Yeah, it's sudden, and then there's Poffenbarger. Suddenly, it's like really interesting. And Poffenbarger already said, you know, reiterated, "Yep, I'm coming.
Hmm.
I'm coming to UM." So, yeah. It's pretty cool. I mean, Cam Ward is thrown for almost 14,000 career yards.
Yeah.
Um, and 119 touchdowns, and he only has 30 interceptions. Um, and he was great when he was in the FCS and Incarnate
Hmm.
yeah, in San Antonio.
Which is a really good FCS
Before
program. I think they might even be FBS now, or they're like kind of in that transition period. But yeah, that's a really good FCS program.
yeah, I mean, yeah, and like we said, I think last week, I'm sure he's friends with Francisco, you know,
I
Maui
know.
Noah,
Yep.
and it's just everything is going right for Miami, and they got a and I guess it was today or yesterday, whatever, or maybe it was last night, a transfer um cornerback,
Yeah.
a new guy, so who's really, really good. Um, so they're in good all of a sudden that Miami is definitely in good shape for the near future, like for immediately. And
Hmm.
Cam Ward, by the way, said that the NFL, I guess, gave him a second round or third round draft status kind of thing. And it wasn't good enough for him.
Yeah.
He
I
wanted to prove that he could be a first rounder.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good situation for everyone. Obviously, he was really good last year, as you said, threw for almost 4,000 yards, 25 touchdowns, 7 picks. Not like he can
Yes.
run. He hasn't been like a huge rushing yard total, but ran for 8 touchdowns last year. Like
8 touchdowns, that's
he's
a lot.
physical. He's not like super fast necessarily, but he's big and physical. And can, that helps both obviously as a passer and in those rushing situations. Um,
And it's making a lot of money.
yeah.
By
And
the way, yeah, I think a mil and a half,
yeah,
1.5 million. I mean, we don't know for sure, but that's kind of what we're thinking it is through
and I'll say
sources.
with the draft, I don't know if he actually would have been a second round pick, like, but this draft is really good for quarterbacks. That's obviously like not a secret. There's a real thought that the top three picks could all be quarterbacks. With obviously Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, who won the Heisman, Michael Penix. We'll see. He's a guy who could keep rising up draft boards. JJ McCarthy, who just won national championship at Michigan, is kind of thought of as an early pick. Bo Nix is, super, has like all the crazy career numbers and all that kind of stuff. Um, I think that next year of quarterbacks, like those are the guys who are all going out either because they're older, like Penix and Nix, or because they're like the no-brainers. You're going to go in the first or second round anyway. If you're a guy like Cam Ward, you come back, you do the same type of stuff you did this year. Um, different conference, new competition. Maybe you show you can be even more of a dual threat than you were because again, like it's not like he was like I threw out the Cam Newton comparison. It's more the body type than the skill. Like he's not a guy who was rushing for 100 yards every game. But he clearly has that capability, I think. Yeah, I don't know what his like 40 time or anything like that is, but that size, that's tantalizing. You look at um,
Yes.
Jalen Hurts, it did
Yep.
not work out this well this year, but what like a Jalen Hurts can bring to the NFL level, Anthony Richardson, um, Josh Allen, like when you have that size, you can be a dual threat, even when you don't necessarily show it in college. And again, he hasn't like shown it a ton other than the touchdown, like that, like you said, 8 touchdowns, a lot of touchdowns. Um, but I'm
Yes, it
really interested to
is.
see what
Ryan?
Miami will kind of scheme up for him offensively this year. Um, and especially with Mario Cristobal and the way they develop offensive linemen, uh, they probably need to find a big receiver. Like they're probably a receiver short at this point, but otherwise, like they've got a really good supporting cast for him to play with.
Yeah, they do. They do. They're receivers. I mean, Xavier Restrepo coming back is really big. So that's going to help a lot. Did we talk about Brashard Smith going to
I think we did.
SMU? I don't think we
I don't know if
did.
we talked about him going to SMU. We
Did we?
obviously talked
Did
about him transferring, but
yeah,
yeah,
another another SMU guy. Um, and did we talk about Jacoby George? I know we did not getting
no, we did
arrested.
not. We did not.
No, for something, I don't know if it was, I'm trying to look because I'm here now on
Right.
vacation, supposedly. I think it was for drag racing, or I don't know if you'd call it drag racing. They don't call it that exactly. Uh, but maybe something like that. And some other traffic infractions too.
Hmm.
So, yeah, that's not good. But I think, by the way, I think for now, he's definitely still on the roster and because he's valuable. All these pieces are important for Cam Ward. They need every receiver they can get,
Yeah.
really.
And I mean, as we saw, like
Um,
you said yesterday, they're not done portal shopping. They're still adding guys. Obviously, um, Bama is at the point where guys are in the portal all the time. Washington, Arizona, I think I saw 9 players entered the portal in a 30-minute stretch today as all these coaches leave um, their schools. The players get that 30-day window. So, Miami, when you get what was the story about Jeremiah Smith and Cam Ward? Like, obviously that didn't end up working out totally for Miami, that the idea that they were going to be a package deal. But when you get a guy like Cam Ward, you become Miami was already a destination for a lot of reasons. And Cam Ward is another big one for them as they try to fill out this roster. All right, I think that'll about wrap us up here. Susan's having some technical issues out there with all the snowstorms and such out on the West Coast. You can follow her on Twitter though at S Miller Degnan. She'll be back in Miami this weekend. And obviously spring ball is not too far away. So lots of Miami news still happening. You can follow me on Twitter at DBWilson2. We'll be back over the next couple of weeks, kind of as necessary. And obviously this is a big week for us to talk about some big news for the Canes. Oh, Susan's back. I was just wrapping us up because of your technical issues. I think we covered just about everything though. Any last thoughts on what this means for Miami? Obviously a big deal. We'll keep talking about this obviously as we get closer to spring ball, which always sneaks up on us, as I was just saying.
Yeah, no, like I said, the last thing I said before I cut out, if you heard it, is it changes everything.
Yeah.
I, this is just people are going to be really excited for spring and for the game.
Yeah, it's like a total 180 shift,
Maybe
as we
he'll
said.
maybe
Like
he'll open that.
it's a 180 shift as Miami went from like a really dire quarterback situation threatening to derail a really promising roster to suddenly, you throw in one of the best quarterbacks in the country onto a roster that already like looks pretty good on paper. Obviously, it's hard to get too excited when Mario Cristobal still hasn't won more than 7 games, but the pieces are in place, and at some point, I think people assume this is gonna click together into place. And I was kind of thinking it would be more like 2025 when they could like really kind of make their run. But obviously, playoff expands this year, and when you get a guy like Ward, like you said, it changes everything.
Yeah, it does, and it's interesting because of the 1 year aspect.
Yeah. That's why
You
it's so
know,
good for them to get
but
Poffenbarger, I think, too, because he'll be here presumably in 2025.
yeah, I mean, but it's just the way college football
It
is
is,
now.
yeah.
Like 1 year, it's free agency 1 year to the next year.
It's crazier because
So
because it's 1 year contracts, as we say all the time, right? That a scholarship is only a 1 year contract. So, uh, yeah, we'll see.
scholarship and however many millions of
Well, yeah,
NIL money.
yeah. And then
That
we'll
like
see. Today there was a
what's
big hearing, right, on Capitol Hill, uh, about college sports in general. So, there, like I was saying before, when you cut out, there'll be plenty of news to get to. We'll kind of come back as necessary to talk about more Miami additions, college football, big picture news, all that kind of stuff.
yeah, I think the Justice Department got involved
Yeah,
today.
yeah,
So, on the side of I mean on against the NCAA, put it that
yeah,
way.
yep. Not good to be the NCAA these days. I'll say that. All
No.
right. Thanks again for listening. Like I said, you can follow Susan on Twitter at @smillardegnan. Follow me on Twitter at DBWilson2. Susan will hopefully be back in Miami this weekend after ice storm
Hopefully
after
tomorrow.
ice storm. So thanks again for listening. We'll talk to you guys later on this month.